There are a number of unpopular truths about social media that most of us don't want to admit, but if you ignore these controversial principles, you'll likely end up compromising your church's social media strategy. And so in this video, I'll detail what each of these unpopular truths is and what they mean for your church online.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Tools, the show where in 10 minutes or less, you're going to get a dose of tips and tactics to help your church share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills, joined as always by the boss man, Brady Shearer.
Alex, social media gives each of our churches a tremendous outlet to take the message of Jesus, the timeless message, and share it through a timely medium.
Yep.
But the more that I work with churches in the realm of social, the more I find that we misunderstand what social media is really all about.
Okay.
And it's very easy, frankly, and admittedly, to be distracted by all of the different options with social. But at the end of the day, what we should be pursuing above everything else is effectiveness. Is what we're doing with our social media efforts accomplishing the goal of our church's mission? And really, aside from that, it doesn't really matter. Life Church has a great saying, which is anything short of sin to reach people with the gospel.
Right.
And what they're saying is essentially, all we want to do is be effective. And so in this podcast, in this video, we want to talk about 3 things that you might not want to admit about social, but if what we care about truly is effectiveness, and we are able to admit these, we're going to be able to be more effective.
Well, as a photographer myself, I really go out of my way to do a lot of things that I thought were correct about social and went out of my way to step up production quality and have this consistent aesthetic. But I would notice that what I was trying to do, although it looked good and although it was accomplishing what I thought was correct about what I wanted to do with my feeds, it wasn't as effective as I wanted it to be. And so I've started to change some things. We've started to change some things here at Pro Church Tools. And I think that these 3 tips are really going to help you and your churches.
That really leads into the first controversial truth about social, and that is that visual branding does not matter. Just does not matter. At the end of the day, everything you're trying to accomplish with social media is encouraging the people that follow you to stop the scroll.
Right.
The 3-word social media strategy that every church can rely on: stop the scroll. I was talking recently with some of the crew over at Elevation Church because they do this perhaps better than anyone. They will use elements of Windows 95 UI. They will use screenshots of a Facebook Live and then animate the Facebook Live video that was a screenshot and then post it on Instagram.
Right.
Just lunacy when it comes to what we think we should be doing on social. Some of my most best performing posts on Instagram are screenshots of tweets that are then posted on Instagram.
Right.
And it kind of is infuriating. Don't tell our head of product and lead designer Eric about this because it'll drive him mad. He'll create these beautiful social templates and I'll be like, look, if we use these, they will not be good because they look too nice and they're too consistent. You don't want to be doing the same thing. And aesthetic and branding, maybe it matters to us, but is it helping you be effective? And when you understand the behavior of users on social, which is they're just flicking and flicking mindlessly, we're scrolling,
Right.
you have to do something that gets them to stop. And a lot of the time, and this leads into our second controversial truth, you need to be unpredictable. You need to be doing things that are different and high variance. Controversial truth number 2 is that repeat equals defeat.
Okay.
It rhymes. It's easy to remember.
Yeah.
On social media, predictability is the enemy because if you do the same thing over and over, you're actually conditioning your audience to stop paying attention.
Yeah.
And the second you do anything that is working against this idea of stop the scroll, you're losing on social.
Yeah.
Stop the scroll should be your number 1 priority above all other things. And so predictability is in exact opposition to that.
Yeah.
And so if you are doing this repetitive, predictable thing, even if the post is great, the second you overdo it, it is no longer great. Repeat equals defeat.
Yeah.
And this is why Elevation does things like taking a Windows 95 user interface element and then plaster it on top of their brand. Elevation has an amazing brand.
Right.
Think about Orange. You think about Elevation. They have a great logo. They will consistently, almost entirely, forego that on platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Stories for the purpose of reaching their audience because they know that repeat equals defeat, and attention is the most valuable commodity your church can possess, and perhaps that's no truer than on social media.
Right. And you nailed it right there. Elevation has a strong brand. Like you said, that orange color. If you see something Elevation, you know it's from Elevation. So are we saying that visual branding doesn't matter at all and that you shouldn't care about your brand or have brand identity at all? Oh, of course not. You should. But does having a consistent brand identity on every post lend to effectiveness? Well, we're learning no, it doesn't. It actually lends to the opposite, to people be conditioned to see that and to scrolling right by. But our goal is to get attention. And to get attention, you have to stop the scroll. And it's, like you said, I love that example of Elevation. It's using a user interface from Windows that we haven't seen in 23 years. It's throwing something like that on Instagram. It's like, oh, I haven't seen that in a long time. What the heck is this? Oh, it's Elevation promoting their new sermon series. I never would have stopped, but I did.
I love what Elevation does.
Yeah.
And when I'm scrolling through social media and I see a screen recording that looks like someone's trying to FaceTime me, I go, what is that? Wait, it's Stephen Furtick FaceTiming me? And then I'm watching one of his sermons. I go, oh, he got me again.
He got me.
Furtick.
Yeah.
And so this is something that you can use, and there's no excuse to think, well, our brand is so beautiful. Look, here at Pro Church Tools, we just did a whole rebrand.
Right.
And I started using social. I was like, oh, beautiful logo, beautiful color, same type of color styling on Alex's beautiful photograph. And then I screenshotted a tweet and it blew up way more.
Right.
And I just was learning again and again that repeat equals defeat. Now, there is one caveat here that I want to mention because I was teaching this at a conference just this week, and I was approached after by a very smart person because this is an objection I've thought of in my own head, and they said, okay, but I love following people like Peter McKinnon online, and all of his stuff is very similar. It's these beautiful photos. And what I said to him was, the audience that Peter is reaching, which would be you and I, Alex and I, are creatives who are geeking out about the creative things that he is doing.
Right.
If your church is full of creative entrepreneurs, then maybe that is the best option for you. And this is why every audience is unique, and this is why we talk about looking into the data of what's actually happening and how your audience is truly responding and then making data-informed decisions and adjustments based on that empirical evidence. But for most of us, our churches are not full of creative entrepreneurs. Even my audience that is full of creatives within the church and communications directors still respond better to a random screenshot than a beautifully crafted photo or video. And so they're probably an outlier. It's easy to think that your audience is similar to theirs, but that is unlikely and almost certainly not the case.
Yeah.
Controversial truth number 3. This is the one that's liberating. So if you were a little bit discouraged by your beautiful brand being thrown to the dogs in the first 2 controversial truths, this one will be liberating for you, and that is that production value on social doesn't really matter.
Right.
My friend Sean Cannell always says, content value over production value.
Yep.
If you can deliver something that is valuable in your content to your audience, it doesn't matter if it was shot in 4K with 14 stops of dynamic range, ProRes, and beautifully uploaded. What's amazing about the world of Snapchat that became the world of Instagram stories is that we have now become conditioned to watching vertical video shot on trash Android phones from 2011 that are shooting in 480p, and we love it because it's raw, it's behind the scenes, and if the content is valuable, it doesn't matter if the production value is amazing.
Yeah, and this one's unfortunate because this is often a stumbling block for churches just getting started on social. Specifically, I think about Instagram. Churches thinking, well, we don't have the gear, we don't have a photographer, we just don't have the talent to put out content, put out photos that are just good enough. And like you said, that's just not true. And it's funny because we were having this conversation in the office today. There's a restaurant here local to our area that's rated as one of the best restaurants in the city, but their social feed, their Instagram feed is ugly. It's terrible. It's photos that some guy is taking low lit of their dish of the day with his cell phone every day. There's no production quality at all, but I stop every time I see that photo every day when he's posting a photo of that menu item because they have a chalkboard menu. It's revolving, it's always new, and I just want to see what they're serving today. I'm interested in the content. I don't care about the quality of the photo, and that's coming from a professional photographer.
If anyone can see through that, it's Mr. Thrills.
Right, but it's the content, the value in the content that's stopping my scroll and getting my attention every single day.
And this is why effectiveness should be your ultimate goal on social. Are you doing something that another church is doing? Is it effective? Do it.
Yep.
Are you neglecting your amazing visual aesthetic? Is it effective? Do it. Are you doing things that are unpredictable and completely lunacy, perhaps on the outside? Are they effective? Do it. Anything short of sin to reach people with the gospel, anything short of nudity on our social media platforms to be effective. To summarize, controversial truth number 1, visual branding does not matter. Controversial truth number 2, repeat equals defeat. And controversial truth number 3, production value does not matter either. If you're looking for more inspiration on how to do this, we tracked 6 churches that we think are doing an excellent job on social media for 21 days. And we captured every single thing that they published on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even Instagram stories. Even on the weekends, we screenshotted all of it and we put it together into a brand new case study. And you can find it if you go to the URL checklist.church. It'll also be linked in the show notes for this episode. Checklist.church is the place to download this case study. And that'll do it for this episode of Pro Church Tools. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Join the tens of thousands of churches on the Pro Church Tools channel that subscribe.
We love each other. We love you. Do you love us?
Subscribe.